Why are you looking at our bills, Emily? Planning to help out your family again? My father asked with that familiar, expectant smile that had cost me over $200,000 through the years. I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, equal parts guilt and resentment, as I looked up from the stack of papers spread across the kitchen table. The early afternoon sun streamed through the windows of my parents' lakeside vacation home, illuminating the dust particles that danced between us. Not exactly, Dad. My voice was steadier than I expected. At 35, I'd spent most of my adult life trying to please this man, but something had shifted inside me last month. My name is Emily Watson. I was born into what looked like a middle-class family from the outside, but the reality inside our home was different. I grew up in functional poverty, not the kind where you go hungry, but the kind where you learn early that your needs always come last. While my parents maintained appearances, I started working at 14, paying for my own clothes, school supplies, and eventually putting myself through college. Everything I have, I've earned through my own sweat and determination. And for too long, I've been bankrolling the family that should have supported me. I'm actually trying to understand why I'm still paying your property taxes when you and Mom bought Lily a new BMW for her 20th birthday. Dad's smile faltered, just slightly. Thomas Watson had perfected the art of subtle manipulation over his 61 years, and I could see him quickly recalibrating his approach. Now, Emmy, he said, using the childhood nickname I'd asked him to stop using years ago, you know your sister doesn't have the advantages you've had. She's still finding her way. I set down the property tax bill, $8,700 due next month, and folded my hands. What advantages would those be? The 3 jobs I worked during college? The student loans I'm still paying off? Or maybe you mean the advantage of knowing from age 16 that no one was coming to rescue me if I failed. That's not fair, he said, his tone hardening as he realized this wasn't going to be our usual conversation. Your mother and I gave you everything we could. The laugh that escaped me sounded foreign to my own ears. Did you, though? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you gave Lily everything and expected me to fill in the gaps for myself, and then for all of you. The creak of floorboards announced my mother's arrival before she appeared in the doorway, her expression cautious. At 58, Catherine Watson still maintained the polished appearance she'd cultivated as the wife of a mid-level executive. Her perfectly highlighted hair framed a face that looked perpetually concerned. What's going on? She asked, though the tension in the room spoke volumes. Emily's upset about helping with some bills, Dad said dismissively. That's not what this is about, I countered. This is about the fact that I've been paying your mortgage, property taxes, and Lily's car payments for the past 5 years while you've been telling me there's no money for family vacations. Mom's hand fluttered to her throat. Her signature move when uncomfortable. You've always been so good with money, Emily. We thought you wanted to help. Wanted to? Or was guilted into it? I stood up, needing to physically shift the power dynamic. Last month, when Lily's dental surgery came up, you told me it was an emergency, that you had no way to cover it. I transferred $10,000 the same day. And we're grateful, Dad interjected. Are you? Because 3 days later, Lily posted photos from Cancun, a trip I knew nothing about. The silence that followed was deafening. 2 days later, I was alone in my father's study, a room I'd rarely been allowed to enter as a child. With my parents and Lily at Sunday brunch with friends, I had the house to myself. What started as looking for my birth certificate for a passport renewal had turned into something else entirely. The file cabinet in the corner yielded more than I expected. Behind tax returns and insurance policies was a folder labeled Lily's Future. Inside was legal paperwork that made my blood run cold, documentation of a $500,000 trust fund established for my sister on her 18th birthday 2 years ago. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. The trust was funded by my grandparents' estate, money I'd been told went to pay off family debts years ago. The same grandparents whose passing had coincided with my college applications when my parents sat me down and explained there was no money for tuition. You're smart, Emily. You'll get scholarships, Dad had said confidently. I did get partial scholarships, and worked 30 hours a week, and took out loans, and graduated a year late because I couldn't always take a full course load while working. The sound of car doors slamming jolted me back to the present. I quickly photographed the documents with my phone before returning them to their folder. When my family walked in, they found me sitting calmly at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. "You're still here?" Lily asked, her voice carrying that slight tone of entitlement that had once seemed cute, but now grated on my nerves. At 20, my sister was everything I hadn't been allowed to be: carefree, confident, and completely unaware of financial realities. "I needed to talk to all of you," I said quietly. Mom's expression immediately shifted to concern. "Is everything okay, honey?" I found Lily's trust fund paperwork. The silence that followed was confirmation enough. Dad recovered first, his face flushing with anger rather than shame. "You had no right to go through my private files." "And you had no right to lie to me for years," I countered. "You told me there was never money for my college tuition." "That was different," Mom said softly. "You were always so independent, Emily. We thought you didn't need help." "I didn't need help because I had no choice but to be independent." My voice cracked with emotion I'd been suppressing for years. "You made me that way by never being there for me financially. And then you used that independence against me." Lily's perfect features contorted in confusion. What trust fund? The fact that she didn't even know about it somehow made it worse. That night, in my apartment an hour away from my parents' home, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced through memories, recontextualizing them with my new understanding. Lily at 8, twirling in her new ballet costume, excited about the private lessons I later learned cost $500 a month. Me at 18, standing in the financial aid office, trying not to cry as I explained why I couldn't make my tuition payment on time. Lily at 16, squealing with delight over her brand new car. Me at the same age, taking the bus to my after-school job at the mall. The pattern was undeniable, but it was what happened after I started my career that truly burned. The calls from Dad about temporary financial setbacks. Mom's gentle suggestions that since I was doing so well, I could help out with family expenses. The way they'd normalized my financial contributions while hiding their resources. My phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "Mom and Dad say you're upset about money stuff. Don't be dramatic, sis. Family helps family." I stared at the message, recognizing the parroted words of my father. Lily wasn't malicious. She was a product of her upbringing, just as I was. The difference was that her upbringing had taught her she deserved everything, while mine had taught me I deserved nothing unless I earned it myself. Another text followed. "BTW, can you send me $300? My credit card is maxed, and I need new tires." For the first time in my adult life, I didn't immediately respond with, "Of course." Instead, I set the phone down and opened my laptop.
The spreadsheet started as a simple accounting exercise. I wanted to know exactly how much I'd given my family over the years. But as the numbers grew, $5,000 here, $12,000 there, a cold reality settled in my stomach. 3 hours later, I stared at the total, $217,843.
More than $200,000. Money that could have paid off my student loans years ago. Money that could have been a down payment on a house instead of the one-bedroom apartment I still rented. Money that could have funded the business I'd always dreamed of starting. My phone rang. Mom's number.
"Emily, did you get Lily's text? She really needs those tires." I took a deep breath. "Mom, we need to talk about something important." "Can it wait, honey? Your father and I are headed to dinner with the Hendersons." "No, it can't wait. I've been adding up how much money I've given this family over the past decade."
Silence.
"It's over $200,000, Mom." Her voice became cautious. "Well, that seems like a lot. Are you sure about your math?" The dismissal in her tone was the final straw.
My math is fine. What's not fine is that I've been sacrificing my financial future for people who never appreciated it and who've been hiding resources from me the entire time.
"Emily, that's not fair." "I'm done, Mom. I'm not paying any more bills. Not for the house, not for Lily's car, not for anyone but myself."
"But we're counting on you for the property taxes next month." Her voice rose in panic.
"You have a $500,000 trust fund for Lily. Figure it out." I hung up and stared at my phone as it immediately began ringing again. I silenced it and opened my banking app, where I methodically canceled every automatic payment I had set up for my family's expenses. For the first time in years, I felt something unexpected: relief. Legally speaking, you have no obligation to continue supporting your parents or sister financially, Sarah Lambert said, sliding her glasses up her nose as she reviewed the documents I'd brought to her office. At 40, the financial attorney had a no-nonsense demeanor that I found comforting. Her office was sparse but elegant, much like her advice.
What about the money I've already given them? Is there any way to recover it? Sarah's expression was sympathetic but realistic. Unfortunately, gifts are gifts in the eyes of the law. Unless you had written agreements specifying these were loans to be repaid, recovery would be extremely difficult.
I nodded, having expected as much.
However, she continued, what I'm more concerned about is protecting you going forward. Your parents clearly know how to push your emotional buttons. We need to make sure you don't fall back into old patterns.
I won't, I said firmly. She gave me a knowing look. Everyone says that. Then their mother calls crying about losing the family home.
The comment hit too close to home, considering the 3 voicemails Mom had left just this morning.
What do you suggest?
First, document everything. I want copies of all bank transfers, texts, emails, anything showing the pattern of financial support, and especially any evidence of manipulation or dishonesty on their part. I pulled out my phone. I've been taking screenshots of everything for the past week. Sarah smiled. Good. Second, I'd like you to write a formal letter stating that you will no longer be providing financial assistance. This creates a clear boundary and a paper trail.
Will this protect me if they try to sue? Dad's been threatening that I have a family obligation.
There's no legal concept of family obligation that would force you to support able-bodied parents who have their own resources, Sarah assured me. The letter is more for you than for them, a concrete step that makes your decision real.
As I left her office an hour later, I felt both lighter and heavier. The path forward was clear, but the journey would be painful. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. 3 days after my meeting with Sarah, I arrived home to find my father's car in my apartment building's parking lot.
He and Lily were waiting outside my door. Finally, Lily said, her perfect features arranged in an expression of wounded betrayal. We've been waiting for like an hour.
I unlocked my door without responding, and they followed me inside uninvited. Emily, this has gone far enough, Dad said, his voice carrying that authoritative tone that had intimidated me for decades. Your mother is beside herself. The property tax notice came with a late fee attached. I set down my purse and turned to face them. That's not my problem anymore. Of course it's your problem, he snapped, his facade cracking. We're your family. Family doesn't manipulate and lie to each other, I replied calmly. Family doesn't hide money from one child while exploiting the other.
Lily's eyes filled with tears. I don't understand why you're being so selfish. I need my car to get to classes. If you don't pay, they'll repossess it.
Then ask Mom and Dad to use some of your trust fund money, I suggested. Her tears dried up instantly. What trust fund?
The $500,000 Grandma and Grandpa left you. The money that could have helped pay for my education, but instead has been sitting untouched while I work myself to exhaustion supporting everyone. Lily turned to Dad, confusion written across her face. Is that true?
Dad's expression darkened. That money is for your future, Lily. For when you get married or want to buy a house, it's not for day-to-day expenses.
And my future? I asked quietly. What about that? You've always been strong, Emily. You've always found a way.
Yes, because I had no choice. But now I do. I walked to the door and held it open. I've canceled all the automatic payments. I've documented everything I've given this family, and I will not give another penny.
You're abandoning your family? Dad's voice rose dangerously. After everything we've done for you.
The laugh that escaped me was bitter. What exactly have you done for me, Dad? Name one thing you financially supported in my adult life. His silence was damning. You owe us, he finally said, his voice low and threatening. We raised you.
And now I'm raised. Consider your parental obligation fulfilled.
Lily began to sob again, this time with what seemed like genuine emotion. "Why are you being so mean? I didn't do anything wrong." Looking at my sister, beautiful, entitled, and completely unprepared for reality, I felt a surprising surge of pity. "No, Lily, you didn't. But you've been benefiting from an unfair system your entire life, and now that system is changing." The following week brought a barrage of increasingly desperate communications from my parents.
First came the angry texts from Dad. "Your mother can't sleep because of the stress you're causing."
Then the guilt-inducing voicemails from Mom. "I don't understand where we went wrong with you, Emily, after everything we've sacrificed." Finally, the notice from the bank that someone had attempted to access my account, but had the wrong password. When I called the bank, they confirmed the attempt came from my parents' home IP address.
That was when I knew I needed to make a clean break. I changed all my passwords, opened accounts at a new bank, and updated my contact information everywhere.
I also did something I'd been avoiding. I called my Uncle John.
My father's older brother had always been kind to me, but he lived on the other side of the country, and we rarely spoke. Unlike my father, Uncle John had built a successful business and lived comfortably without needing to rely on others.
"Emily, what a nice surprise," his warm voice came through the phone. "Uncle John, I need your advice about something difficult," I said, before explaining the situation in as unbiased terms as I could manage.
The silence that followed told me everything.
"I had no idea," he finally said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Your father told the family he was putting both you girls through college. He talked about how proud he was to support you."
The revelation shouldn't have hurt after everything else, but it did. My father had been building his reputation as a generous parent on my dime.
"There's a family reunion next month," Uncle John continued. "I think it's time some truths came to light."
The annual Watson family reunion had always been held at my parents' lake house, the same house whose property taxes I'd been paying for years. I almost didn't attend this year, but Uncle John convinced me it was important. "Running away won't solve anything," he'd said. "Standing your ground might." So there I was, nursing a lemonade on the deck while watching my extended family mingle. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all with their own complex dynamics, but none as twisted as what existed between me, my parents, and Lily. Cousin Mark, who was my age but whose life had followed a completely different trajectory thanks to parents who'd actually supported him, approached with a concerned expression. "Hey, Em, you okay? You seem different." I managed a small smile. "I'm fine, just some family stuff." "Anything I can help with?" Before I could answer, Uncle John clinked his glass, gathering everyone's attention for the traditional family toast. As the eldest Watson, it was his right to speak first at these gatherings. "Family is everything," he began, echoing the familiar refrain. "But family means honesty, support, equal love for all our children." My father shifted uncomfortably beside my mother, clearly sensing something was off. "I recently learned something disturbing," Uncle John continued, "something that goes against everything the Watsons stand for." The gathering grew quiet, all eyes on my uncle. "Thomas," he said, turning to my father, "would you like to explain why Emily has been paying your bills for years while you've been hiding money meant for both your daughters?" The collective gasp from the extended family was audible. My father's face flushed deep red. "This is a private family matter," he hissed. "We are family," Uncle John replied calmly. "And I want to understand how you could lie to all of us about supporting Emily through college when she was working 3 jobs and taking out loans. How you could claim financial hardship to her while setting up a trust fund for Lily." Heads turned toward me, expressions ranging from shock to pity to disbelief. Dad stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the deck. "Emily has chosen to twist the facts to make herself look like a victim. She's always been jealous of the attention Lily received." "Is it attention I'm jealous of, Dad? Or basic financial support?" My voice was steady despite my racing heart. "Should I show everyone the spreadsheet of the $200,000 I've given this family?" Cousin Mark's jaw dropped. "200,000? Are you serious?" Dad tried to save face. "Emily has been fortunate in her career. She chose to help her family as any loving daughter would." "I didn't choose," I corrected him. "I was manipulated and guilted, and now that I've stopped paying, suddenly I'm the villain." Mom stepped forward, her expression stricken. I never wanted any of this. Thomas made all the financial decisions. I just went along with what he said was best. Dad turned to her in disbelief. Catherine! It's true, she said, tears welling in her eyes. I knew it wasn't fair to Emily, but you insisted Lily needed more support. The family gathering had become uncomfortably quiet, with everyone witnessing the unraveling of decades of deception. In the aftermath of the family reunion, relationships fractured and realigned. Some relatives took my father's side, arguing that parents have the right to distribute resources as they see fit. Others, like Uncle John and Cousin Mark, stood firmly with me. Lily was perhaps the most affected. Learning about the trust fund and realizing the extent of our parents' favoritism shook her worldview. 2 weeks after the reunion, she showed up at my apartment, alone for the first time. I didn't know, she said simply as I let her in, about any of it. I believe you, I replied, and I did. Lily had been as much a pawn in our parents' dysfunctional game as I had been, just in a different way. We talked for hours that day, really talked, perhaps for the first time as adults. I explained my resentment not of her, but of the system that had pitted us against each other. She shared her fear of losing the only support system she'd ever known. I don't know how to be like you, she admitted, independent, strong. You can learn, I told her, and unlike me, you have resources to help you transition. As for my parents, the reckoning was painful but necessary. Dad continued to justify his actions, though his arguments grew weaker as more family members questioned his decisions. Mom vacillated between defending him and apologizing to me, never quite breaking free of the dynamic they'd established decades ago. I made my final decision after consulting again with Sarah, my attorney. I'll maintain a relationship with my family, I told her, but it will be entirely separate from finances. No more gifts, no more loans, no more support. And if they continue to pressure you? She asked. Then I'll distance myself further. My well-being has to come first now. The process wasn't easy. There were tearful phone calls, angry emails, and numerous attempts to make me feel guilty. But with each passing month, it got easier to stand my ground. 6 months after I'd first confronted my parents, I signed the papers on my first home, a modest but beautiful place that would have been within my reach years ago if I hadn't been supporting my family. As I stood in the empty living room, keys in hand, I felt an unfamiliar lightness. For the first time in my adult life, my money was truly my own. My future belonged to me alone. The sound of a text message broke the silence. It was from Lily. Congrats on the house, sis. Proud of you. I start my new job next week, my first without Dad's help. Wish me luck? I smiled as I typed my response. You don't need luck. You're stronger than you think. And so was I.